Hopefully everybody's staying warm. For those of you who are not here with me in person, we are broadcasting live from a new agent training class. We've got, 5 agents here in the room who are just getting started. Interestingly enough, 2 of them are actually coming in as sub-agents and working for their fathers, which is a pretty cool thing. We have a lot more people that are being referred into the business in various formats, and so it's very cool to see that all coming together. But so over the last couple of weeks, we've spent a little bit of time starting this journey together. We're doing a 12 or 13 week cycle that is really going to be focused on kind of the beginning of the process to the end of the sales process. And for those of you that are new and in the room, we'll be sharing the video recordings from the last 2 weeks so you can kind of catch up on what we've covered so far. But I think Steve Cavajola did a great job last week, really talking about working leads and what that looks like. And, one of the things that I want to make sure that everybody really understands is, especially in the beginning when you're getting started in this business, I really feel that the channels that leads are coming into your practice through, there's really 3 channels. And I'd love to hear if anybody has any other feedback, but there's 3 ways leads are going to enter your system, right? They're either going to be purchased leads that are being manufactured by someone else and delivered into your system. We obviously have a very robust platform to do that through Health Markets and through our Lead Connect platform. They're going to be leads that are personally developed or generated in some form of marketing that you're doing, or they're going to be referrals. And for the entire 24 years that I've been a part of this organization, we have talked about this 3-legged stool when it comes to lead generation. And those are the 3 categories that really all leads are going to fall into. And I'll tell you, this has really informed how we've built things out, like our performance tracker spreadsheet. We understand that leads are going to come in through one of those 3 channels. And in the beginning, I think you have to have, I'm a fisherman, so I like the analogy of you got to have a lot of lines in the water. You got to have a lot of things going on. You got to have a lot of different ways that you're fishing for new prospects and new clients. As your business progresses, though, and it matures, I do think you're going to come to a point in your career where you don't have to make a lot of outbound phone dials. You don't have to purchase a lot of leads, and you may not even have to market yourself as robustly as what you did in the beginning. I think when you think about the 3 things that drive revenue for us as agents, there are three buckets that your time should fall into. The first one is marketing your business. The second is scheduling appointments. And the third is running those appointments. And so in the beginning, that marketing and scheduling of appointments is where you're going to spend the majority of your time. I tell any new agent getting started, if you can get to a point that you can run 5 to 6 client meetings a week, you're probably going to be okay. Somebody told me very early in my career, and I think this still holds true, that if you're meeting with enough people each week, 1/3 of the people will buy from you just because you're the insurance agent and you have what they need. 1/3 of the people will never buy from you, regardless of what you say or do. And the other 1/3 is where a good sales process and a good skill set can net out some sort of a sale for you. And I really believe that to be true. Even as a new agent, if you're getting in front of 6 prospective clients who have some level of interest in you or your product, you're going to make 2 sales just by running 6 appointments on a weekly basis. And then as you get better and better, that closing percentage will get higher and higher. The quality of your leads should also get better as you move forward. And eventually you'll end up in a place like many of us are today, where we're 100% referral driven. I will tell you today, I don't make any outbound phone dials. I do some marketing, but it's spending more money, less time. However, when I started in the business, marketing was a huge part of what dominated my time every single week. There were weeks early in my career that I was walking into 300 and 400 different businesses and dropping off information and implementing a robust follow-up process. I think that walk and talk process, if I were a new agent getting started today, I don't think there's a better process. We have a gentleman named Ty in the room with us today, and his father's Joel Mulder. And Joel has built his business over the last 4 years really on this whole idea of walking and talking into small business America. Walking in, dropping off information, picking up a business card, getting that business card into your CRM, scheduling a follow-up call, sending a follow-up email, and then sending a direct mail follow-up. Whatever that process looks like, you can build it any number of ways, but I do think there is something to building out your practice in that way and in that format. I know that's what I did when I started. I wanted to engage with small business owners in my local community, and I wanted to connect with them. I wanted to get them into my CRM, and I wanted to start drip marketing on those individuals in anticipation of them having a future trigger event that they would hopefully come back to me on. So those were some things that I think are just worth understanding and thinking through. What I really want to focus the majority of my time on today, though, is really more around the idea of building a referral practice. Because no matter where you're at in the business, this is something that we can all do better. And I will tell you, referrals are uniquely different from any other type of lead that you will receive. The thing that's unique, I think, about referrals is that they are oftentimes being referred to you by someone who they know and they trust and they believe in, whether it's their friend or their family member or their financial planner or their CPA or any other number of individuals in their circle. And so building relationships with these types of individuals, really cultivating a center of influence list that you can continue to keep your information in front of, I think is a really, really important part of this. I want to flip over here very quickly because I had put together some notes for today. And I want to just, kind of walk through some of the things that we talked about or we're going to talk about. I'm going to share my screen here just so you guys can kind of see the talking points that I'd prepped. And I'll also send these out to you so that you can have these to kind of refer back to. But I'm going to zoom in just a little bit here. All right. So the other thing that I'd say about referrals is that when you think about closing ratios, if you're meeting with people who are coming to you and being referred by someone that they know or they like or they trust, those are going to be much higher closing percentages as well. These people come to you with a different context of who you are and a different respect for the work that you actually do. And I think that's worth thinking about. To me, it all starts, though, with the idea of, are you referable? And I think each of us has to look at ourselves and look at our practice and look at how we carry ourselves. And I don't like to get superficial with this, but I think some of it does boil down to, how does the car that you drive look? It doesn't have to be a new Mercedes-Benz, but is it clean? Does it have dings in it? What does it look like? How do you dress? What do you look like when you're presenting yourself in front of a client? Are you professional looking? We have Greg in the back of the room. He's the most professional dressed guy in the room. You look great today, man. A full suit and tie. Obviously I don't think that's necessary in every client engagement that we have, but you got to think about, what does that look like? I also think when, with things changing, we meet people how they want to be met today. So we might be meeting them in person, which when you're meeting somebody in person, there's a whole host of things there. Like, what do you smell like? What do you look like? How do people perceive you when you walk into the room? Those are all things that you've got to kind of critically evaluate. We also, though, meet with people virtually. So I'll tell you, many of us got much better at this when COVID hit because we started realizing we have to do business virtually with people. And so I would ask you, if you've got a virtual environment that you're going to conduct business from, what does it look like? Do you have a good camera? Do you have a good microphone? I bring this microphone with me because I want to capture everything. Do you have some sort of a halo light or lamp? I don't have that right now because I'm in a conference room at a hotel, but I actually, when I walked in here, the windows were all shaded over, the shades were pulled, and it was dark in here. And I knew I was going to be broadcasting, so I wanted to open that up a little bit. So I've got natural light coming in. The natural light, as you can tell, is not behind me. It's in front of me, like shining on my face. You don't want to be in a dark shadow, right? You want to be well positioned in front of the screen. There's a lot of different resources and tools that you can use if you're presenting in a virtual setting to make sure that the client can see you, that they can hear you. And then you also got to think about, what is your background, right? I think if you guys have home offices or things like that, you've got to build that environment so that it is aesthetically pleasing for somebody to come in and, have an intelligent conversation with you. And then, there's also this aspect of doing business by phone. What does that look like? Can they hear you? If you're using a virtual phone system like Zoom, is it a good connection? Are you connected? You have kids screaming in the background or pots banging in the background, or is the dog barking in the background? I mean, those are all things that you have to think about, I think, as you're kind of presenting yourself. Obviously being presentable, being kind and nurturing in these client engagements, making sure that the client feels that you really, at your core, want to help them. These are kind of intangibles, but I think you've got to kind of think through them. One thing I would highly recommend that everybody do, and we have the ability to do it, especially in a virtual setting, but is to record yourself and listen back to it. All of you in the room, we're going to ask you to actually record a Protection for Life presentation via Zoom or Loom or some other recording software that's out there or website. But for those of you who have been in the business for a while, I don't think there's anything wrong with even taking the time, if you're meeting with somebody virtually, recording. For those of us who work in the Medicare space, we are actually required to record our phone calls and our Zoom meetings when we're talking about benefits with a client. So it's just a natural thing to record that. And it's not just a matter of recording it, but watch it back. Sometimes we're going to be our own best critic about how we're coming across, or worst critic, I guess, depending on how you look at it. But we're gonna critique ourselves better, kind of reviewing that. I know, I think back to when I started back in 2001, we didn't have all these great recording capabilities that we have today, but I literally set up a VHS camcorder in my parents' living room. I remember doing this, and I hit record and I presented several times, and I watched that back before I ever let anybody else see what I was doing, because I wanted to see, like, from my perspective, was I proud of the presentation? Did I feel like it flowed well? Did I know the material, and what did the transitions look like as I was moving from one point to the next? I'm a big believer when it comes to presentations that, half of it is the content that you're delivering. The other half of it is the transition from one point to the next. And what does that look like, and what does that feel like? So I think that's one thing you guys can do, to make sure that you are presenting yourself in a very professional way. Some of this is faking it until you make it too. For those of us who are brand new, I mean, I was 24 when I started in the business. It's one of the reasons why I grew facial hair, was because I felt so young. I was trying to give myself some credibility, early in my career. But, I think you've got to think through, how are people perceiving you and how you're presenting yourself, right? That's a big piece of this. And then the last question that I asked here is, do you have a system, or do prospects perceive you to be disheveled, haphazard, and unorganized? I think coming into a client meeting, you're going to get better and better. You're going to get more and more polished. But I really feel like when you're engaging with the consumer, especially in the beginning, there is nothing wrong with having an outline or a checklist or something that you bring in with you. I think it can be a little bit awkward if you don't introduce what that is and you're just working off it. It looks like you have a crutch. But actually, if you sit down with the client and say, hey, I've taken some time to really prep for today's meeting. I've got some key points that I want to make sure we cover, and I want to make sure that I don't miss anything. So I've actually got a list of things that we're going to work our way through here today to make sure that I don't drop the ball on anything. I think presenting that way in the very beginning, until you get really, really good at this, is perfectly appropriate. And it makes you appear way more professional than if you're just shooting from the hip on things. So I don't think you can shoot from the hip. People figure that out. Now, there's a few people across our territory or across our organization that do have the ability to shoot from the hip. But for most of us, I think we need to be very organized in the work that we do. And I think this all goes back to that idea is, are you referable? I read a book a number of years ago, and actually one of our past presidents had recommended it. And it was actually a book that was written by the gentleman who, it was called Onward. And it was the gentleman who had started Starbucks. And it's really an interesting read if you haven't checked it out. I read it on the recommendation of our CEO, Phil Hildebrand, back in the day. And it kind of changed how I think about things, because, Starbucks, and the whole idea behind Starbucks is that somebody came up with an idea on how they can sell $6 and $8 and $10 cups of coffee to people across the world, and people line up every morning to spend that kind of money on that type of a product. And the coffee's okay. It's not just the coffee that they're selling, it's an experience that they're selling, right? And it's really that book is a really interesting read on how do you deliver an exceptional experience. I firmly believe that people will not refer business to someone just doing business as usual. If it's a ho-hum or a mundane process, you're not going to get a ton of people referred to that. What people refer business to is an exceptional experience, right? And I think as agents, we really have to critically evaluate what kind of an experience are we delivering to the consumers that we're serving. And I think not only do you want to deliver this exceptional experience, but I think when you're doing and you're delivering an exceptional experience, you can ask some questions at the end of that appointment that facilitate more referrals. One of the questions that I like to ask is, Sam, so what did you think about this this process that we worked our way through here to help you land on the product that you need and you want. Again, I'm not asking them, hey, do you know anybody else who needs to buy insurance or anybody else that I can try to sling insurance to? I'm asking them more about the process that they went through to land on the product and what they think of that process. And I'll tell you, inevitably, when I ask that question, clients do say, wow, this is really great, Silas. We're so appreciative of the work that you did for us, how you explain things. They go on and on about this experience, not the actual end product that they're purchasing. So I go back to all of us should self critique a bit and look at our process and say, what do we need to do to shore up our process so that we are delivering an exceptional experience? I think it's also worth thinking about, what are you doing to drive referrals to your practice? Are there specific things that you're doing and engaging in on a regular basis that are going to drive referrals to you? A big piece of this for me is tracking referrals. We actually, in my practice, a number of years ago, we started tracking every incoming referral. Because if I want to build a referral practice, I not only need to know how many do I have coming in, but I need to know where they're coming from, who are the types of people that are referring them. Because if I'm getting referrals, multiple referrals from one source or one person, I think spending a little bit of extra time, effort, and energy might enhance that particular referral source, right? So we actually have a very simple spreadsheet. I actually have it in a Google on the Google Drive now for my staff and my team, and we try to track. And I'm very liberal with what I call a referral. If somebody was referred to me by any outside resource, we're counting it as a referral coming into my practice. And we've had years where we have 200, 250, 300 different referrals that will come into the business. Those are wonderful years. I mean, if you can get to a point, honestly, for any of you in the room, if you get to a point where you're bringing in 50 or 100 referrals in a year, that's a lot of new business that's coming in. And I know from tracking this personally that the vast majority of the people who are referred to me actually end up doing business with me. I mean, they do. It's like 90+% chance that if somebody's referred to me, they're doing business with me, right? I mentioned earlier, these people that are actually coming into your business too, they are coming in with a different context and a different understanding of who you are. And many times they're willing to wait in line for days or weeks to get into your schedule. They're not shopping elsewhere because they are there to see you, Greg. I will tell you one of the difficulties that we've dealt with in my personal practice is that as our business has grown and as more and more referrals come in, we have tried to take a number of those referrals and kind of defer them to other sub-agents that are a part of my organization. That can be problematic though. And it's a blessing and a curse because I do have clients that come in, they're like, no, my financial advisor said I need to talk to Silas. I don't want to talk to Sandra or Tanya. And they have no context to who that other person is that's a part of my staff. One of the things that I'm working to do much better this year is to promote my staff as an extension of me and make sure that when I'm talking to my clients and I'm talking to my centers of influence, that they understand that I've taken time to put a team around me and that team is actually functioning as an extension of me so that people are more apt to be willing to meet with someone who doesn't have the name Silas. So that's kind of something to think about as well. I do think it's a great idea too, if you're tracking referrals, to set some goals around how many referrals do you actually want to have coming into your practice each week, each month, and each year. Again, our performance tracker spreadsheet gives you the ability to not only set those goals on a quarterly basis, but then to also track them and you keep track of how many are coming in every single week so that you have a very realistic measurement of what's coming in through that. So I'm going to actually show you guys what our referral spreadsheet actually looks like. So I'm going to pop out here and I'm going to jump to, actually, I'm going to come here first. And I'm going to jump into my Google Drive. And inside of my Google Drive, I'll let Justin in here too. So this is our referral log right here. And you can see so far this year, it looks like we've had 21 referrals that have come in the first 6 weeks of the year. What's that? Correct. So this is mine. And then Tanya is a sub-agent on my team. So she's had a couple that have come in. And Sandra is also a sub-agent on my team. Holy crap, Sandra. 26. So, I start looking across my enterprise. We've got, 50 some new referrals that have actually come in over that period of time. which is really, really cool to look at. In 2024, so this is looking back at last year, it looks like I had personally a little over 100. Sandra, you had 100 as well. So right there is 200 that had actually come in. And when you guys look at this, this is kind of the things that I've decided I want to track is what date did it come in? Who was the person? Who were they referred by? What product were they referred in for? And what ended up happening? And then what kind of notes do we have? And you can look at, I mean, just looking at Saunders 2024, look at all of these sales, guys, versus the no sales. I mean, that's an incredible amount of referrals that have actually come in and an incredible amount of sales that were actually generated by those. So I've tracked this way back. I mean, we've had some years where it's 200, 300, 400 referrals that have actually come in to the business. I think it's just a wonderful thing to know. The other thing that the other reason that I think it's really important to track this, I also put this into the notes in the CRM for each client. If they were referred by somebody, I make sure and notate that inside of the resource center in the notes so that I can keep track of that long term. We tag them as a referral as far as the lead source inside of the CRM as well. But one of the other things that I've done and I've really worked hard to do is make sure that when those referrals actually come in, we're thanking the person who referred them. And we're also, at the same time that we send out a thank you letter. So most sales that I make, we send 2 handwritten thank you notes. One is to the new client, and I use a very simple set of verbiage. It's, Sam, we just wanted to thank you for your business and ask for your referral. If you know of anyone else that we can help, we hope you'll pass our information along. I put a couple of business cards in there. So I'm thanking them, but the larger part of that message is who else do you know that we might be able to help? And then secondary to that, whoever referred that person in, we're sending them a thank you note as well and saying, hey, thank you for referring so-and-so into our business. Certainly, if you know anybody else that we can help, we really appreciate your referral. Here's a couple of additional business cards for you. Whether it's business cards or business cards with magnets or some other marketing form, I think it's okay. Whatever you want to do with that, you can do. But you just want to make sure that that's part of your post-sale process as well. A lot of people actually ask me if I pay for referrals, which I do not. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't, because some people do and seem to have some success with that. But I guess my thought has always been, I want referrals coming into my business based on the quality of the work that I'm doing and the quality of the process that I'm taking a client through, not because I'm willing to give you $5 or $10 or $50 for that particular lead, right? The other thing that I think has always kept me from paying people for referrals is there are some, depending on what state you live in, there are some federal and state laws around something called rebating, which is giving your clients money. And there are some very hard, fast rules around that you do have to be careful about. And so to avoid that, I've just never paid anybody for a referral. I'm not saying that, a cup of coffee or a $5 gift card to Starbucks isn't a nice thing to receive. I know a lot of financial planners that I work with actually do that too. So I think there's definitely, it's not a terrible thing or something you should totally discount, but it's not something that I've necessarily actively engaged in. So I want to talk a little bit more about the process. We talked about on the front end, like, okay, so how do you appear? How do clients perceive you when they first engage with you? Are you professional? Do you smell nice? Do you look good? Like all those things are really important. But I think you've also got to think through this process that we teach. I just came off of a call with our group of territory vice presidents, and Dallas Richens was on that call, who's our life insurance guru. And one of the things that there is a training tomorrow, I'll put that plug in on Wednesday, that Dallas is going to go over some life insurance training that I think everybody should jump on. But one of the things that Dallas really talked about on that is that the agents who seem to have the highest success selling life insurance, the thing that they do differently is they have a very engaging fact-finding process. It's not just a matter of gathering demographic information, it's asking some of the feeling questions. So how do you feel about this? Do you feel that you have enough life insurance? Has anybody taken you through the process of, actually doing a life insurance needs analysis? Do you know how much you actually need? So going a little bit deeper into that fact-finding process, and then obviously matching that up with a good, what we call positioning statement or protection for life presentation. I think those are two really, really important things, and especially for newer agents, like having a good fact-finding process and then having a good positioning statement where you're explaining to the client your process, you're explaining to them the basics of whatever product they need to know, you're telling them about the gaps and holes, you're educating them in an 8 to 12 minute, presentation, I think is really, really important as well. And so as you guys are getting started in the room, those are two things we're going to ask you to really practice and focus on is practice your fact finding. I think fact finding, somebody said this, actually, Rochelle Wertentile said this probably 15 years ago, and it just stuck with me. She said, a good fact finding experience should be like a good date. And I understand what she means by that, right? I just got back from Scottsdale, Arizona. I spent a couple of days there with my wife, and we went out each night, had a date night 4 nights in a row, which doesn't happen in our world very often. But it was a blast. I mean, some of these hours we had were like 2-hour conversations, and we were talking about things we haven't talked about in a long time, and eating great food and having some cocktails. And I mean, I had 4 great dates with my wife 4 nights in a row on this little trip that we took. And so I go back and, a good fact-finding experience should be a back and forth. It should be an engaging conversation. And, it should not only build trust, but obviously that client is going to be answering questions along the way. And you're going to be leading them in a way that helps them self-identify needs that maybe they didn't even know they had when they first sat down to talk to you. And so it's a bit revealing at times because they're opening up a bit to you and they're being honest with you. And that's kind of what, that fact-finding process is about. And then you transition into your positioning statement, telling them a little bit more about who you are and who Health Markets is, and the things they should understand about health insurance or Medicare, the gaps and holes that are inherent in any underlying medical insurance plan, and some of the possible solutions that are available. I think there needs to be a slight, mention of life insurance and a short conversation about life insurance and that. I think we're laying the foundation and we're educating our clients so that they can become a good consumer and make a good buying decision when they get to the point that they're actually ready to do that. And so, that all kind of goes back to, how good is your fact-finding experience and how good is your positioning statement? And those are two things that every single one of us can continue to hone and refine. I'll tell you, I don't think mine's ever reached a point where it's perfect. It's something I'm always constantly working to improve on and enhance. And so I don't think you ever, I'm 24 years into the business. I said this today and it kind of struck me. I spent half of my life, I'm 48 right now. I've spent half of my life doing this with this organization. That's kind of wild to think about, but I'm still learning. I'm still honing and refining. I'm still tweaking, that fact finding and that positioning statement. So I think that can lead back to referrals, because if you're doing those two things really, really well, if the client felt heard, if they felt that you really care about them, if they feel that you did a great job educating them and explaining things to them without trying to sell them something, like those are all things that really help to drive more referrals coming into your practice. So I want to talk a little bit about centers of influence. I call them COIs, or and if you think about what a center of influence is, it's people who know you, like you, and would like to see you be successful. For all of you in the room, I sent you an email yesterday as I was traveling back with a spreadsheet and an introductory letter that I think you should begin to cultivate a list of COIs and begin communicating regularly with these individuals. When I think about who should be on your COI list or who could be on your COI list, think about your Facebook friends, your LinkedIn connections, people in your church directory. If you have a Rolodex or an address book or some sort of Christmas mailer that you do, people that you would mail a Christmas card to. Starting to build out this list of people who know you, like you, and would like to see you be successful, I think can be a really, really powerful way of jumpstarting your business or re-jumpstarting your business, depending on where you're at in the business. In the beginning, I encourage agents to do this. And it's really not an exercise of, I know a lot of different sales organizations want you to come up with your list of 50 or 100 people that you can go out and try to sell something to. To me, this is not about that. It's not about trying to sell them something. What it's about is letting them know what you're doing, letting them know what your capabilities are, and simply asking for their referral. So when I reach out to centers of influence, I'm not trying to sell them anything. When I started in the business 24 years ago, I did not like the idea of trying to go hose my friends and family with whatever new product I was trying to sling, right? Like it just felt greasy, it felt slimy. I refused to do it. And I was never asked to in this business. but I know other sales organizations do that. And it's really interesting because I never have approached my friends and family about selling them insurance. But today, 24 years in, I insure almost all of my friends and family in some way. But it's a uniquely different engagement because they came to me and asked for my help. It wasn't me approaching them. Now, I might have reached out to them. I did reach out to them through a Center of Influence letter and let them know, hey, I'm starting a new career. Here's what I'm doing. Here's the types of products that I can help people with. Here's the situations where I might be able to help someone that you know. Feel free to pass along my website. Here's a couple of business cards. I just appreciate your referral if you know anybody that I might be able to help. I think that's a much less intrusive way of reaching out and letting people know, that you're there to help them. I also think the COI list and sending a letter out to them should not be something that's a one and done situation. I think once you've got this list, you want to continue to keep your information in front of that list of individuals. And you can build out what you want your process to be. But I think about those of you in the room who are just getting started today. I mean, I think as you launch your practice, letting people know, here's what my capabilities are. Greg, you're going to have some new arrows in your quiver that you probably haven't had in your quiver, even though you've been in the insurance business for a period of time. Same thing with you, William. So letting them know, hey, I've got some additional product lines that I might be able to help clients with. And again, I would just appreciate your referral. So I think a letter with a couple of business cards, a couple of marketing pieces, that's a wonderful way to do it. I would say do it very high quality. A little heavier paper, like make it look nice, make it hand addressed. Don't make it look like it was something that was, batched out with, through a service or anything like that. And then that same list, you may give it 90 days and put together a very similar email to them and send them an email follow-up with some of the same verbiage and some of the same communication, because people are going to, hear things in different ways. And if you mail me something, there's a 50-50 shot on whether I'm even going to see it. I'm not really good at checking my mail. My wife throws it into a drawer and I get to it about once every 90 days and I open it up and realize what I've got to clean up. But that's not a great way to communicate with me. So you think about that. And then I also think about, especially those of you that are starting now, I think a letter, maybe an email as we move into the summer months, and then reaching back out to these people around October, early November, because that's when the annual enrollment, open enrollment period hits. This is the time of year where people can make changes and adjustments to their plans and tweak things. And so I think just communicating that out to that group of individuals, that center of influence, list that you put together could be really, really powerful. And I mentioned on here in the notes, asking for their referral, not for their business. I think that's where this is a uniquely different type of approach. The other thing that I want to spend a little bit of time on is I think there's your personal COIs, your personal centers of influence, but I also think there's another segment of professional COIs that can and will develop over time. So I actually have a center of influence list, a similar spreadsheet that I keep and I maintain. And when I think about who these people are, a lot of them are financial planners. A lot of them are CPAs or accountants, attorneys, property and casualty insurance agents. I know Greg had mentioned he worked for the farms. Was that how you said it? The farm bureaus and the state farms. Well, we partner with a lot of those types of agents because they don't do what we do and they don't have the capabilities that we do. So you think about the property and casualty insurance agents. You think about HR professionals. I never really realized how lucrative it could be to develop relationships with people who are in HR departments of large companies until I started doing it. And I got to give one of my good friends, Brent Bontrager, kudos, because he's the one that pushed me on this. He's a financial planner with Edward Jones. And probably 15 years ago, he was the president of an organization called the Michiana HR Association, MHRA. And so we live here in Michiana, Indiana, Michigan, combined. That's what we call this area. And so they have the Michiana HR Association, and he was the president there. And candidly, I don't know exactly why he was the president, other than he was trying to get into these companies to handle their 401ks and things like that, right? So it was something that he decided he would do. And he invited me to come to a lunch event with him one day. And this MHRA, this Michiana HR Association, still meets on a monthly basis. I don't forget which day of the month it is, but Sandra's involved, Tanya's involved, I'm involved with it. We're sponsors today. We have Health Markets logos all over everything. We've done some presentations there. But I remember when Brent first approached me about this, my instant reaction was, why would I go eat lunch with a bunch of people that I have nothing in common with? and I don't do group insurance business or large group insurance business, so this would be a waste of my time. And that was a really naive and stupid thing to think, honestly, hindsight being 2020, because I've developed so many relationships with those HR managers now. I also have great relationships with some of the large group insurance brokers like Gibson Insurance here locally. And these relationships have developed into tremendous amount of business for me, even though I don't do group insurance. And I kind of joke about it because there's a lot of scraps that fall out of group insurance plans, even if you don't do large group insurance, right? You think about that new employee that gets hired and they got a 90-day waiting period until they can get on the group insurance. That's an opportunity for us to help people. You think about people that are getting fired or are retiring or are voluntarily leaving on their own. All of those people are losing their group insurance and potentially looking at a COBRA rate, which might be $1,500 to $2,000 a month for a family as a continuation of their group insurance. You think about people that are turning 65 within that group. As I've developed these relationships, we have become more and more of a resource for people that work in HR. And I have now positioned myself that I'm doing a lot of presentations in front of these groups, these large groups, even though I don't do large group insurance. A lot of them are Medicare focused today. I think about Bethel College, the city of South Bend, the city of Mishawaka, Tamco, Farmers State Bank. These are all organizations that ask me to come in at least once or twice a year and do a Medicare 101 type of presentation where I'm standing in front of a group of people. They fill the room with their employees. Their employees are on the clock. A lot of times it's a lunch and learn event. They tell them to bring their spouses or friends in for them. Sometimes I'm walking into these rooms and there's, 20, 30, 40 people that are in that room, a captive audience, and somebody sets me up front to talk for 35 or 40 minutes about Medicare, and it turns into people recognizing you as the expert. A lot of these people then come in as referrals. I can't tell you how many times we have people call us and we're like, where'd you get our information? They're like, well, we sat in on a presentation that Silas did 3 years ago, and we're finally ready to retire. So I think there's huge opportunities when you start thinking about, HR folks, as we said, the CPAs, the attorneys, the property and casualty insurance brokers, the financial planners, all of those people. I will say Gary Boverhoff, our Grand Rapids or sales leader in the Grand Rapids market, is probably the best in the country when it comes to developing relationships with his clients' financial planners. And he has a really interesting approach to it. And I think Joel's really jumped on this too. But his approach is when he's meeting with his clients and they are buying into Gary and his process and the fact that he's very professional, as he kind of wraps up the conversation, he lets his clients know that he would like to be one of their board members. Sometimes people kind of say, what do you mean? Well, I'd like to sit on your personal board. I'd like to sit next to your financial planner and your CPA and your attorney as your insurance agent. Now, obviously, to be a good board member, that means that I'd like to have an opportunity to meet the other board members. And if you're okay with it, I'd like to reach out to them and introduce myself, tell them that we have a mutual client that we're working with, and maybe just take a little bit of time to explain what my capabilities are and how we might be able to work together to better protect you and your family. So Gary then gets these clients to give him their financial planners and their CPAs and their attorneys' contact information with a blessing to reach out to them. When you're calling a financial planner of a client, it's a much different approach when you can say, hey, we have a mutual client, and in our conversation, so-and-so actually asked me to reach out to you and have a conversation and help navigate things here. A lot of times when we're dealing with financial planners, especially when it's, people that are retiring early, things like that, helping them navigate the nuances of government subsidies and potentially suppressing their income to qualify for higher government subsidies until they can get into Medicare. There's some real strategy that could be involved in that. And I think that, obviously having those conversations and establishing yourself as an expert with those other experts can lead to a lot of really great, wonderful things. So that's one thing that Gary has done really, really well. Something else that I think many of us do, I just sent out our Christmas cards, and this is a huge project that I engage in every single year. I think we sent out almost 1,600 Christmas cards this last year. And my Christmas cards up until this point have been a picture of my family and my like get a professional photographer to take pictures, and my wife picks the best picture of the family, and she uses that for all her personal business or personal Christmas cards. And then I get left the leftover picture, like the second best that I can put on my Christmas card, and we use that and push it out. I actually have a friend of ours that does hand addresses every single one of them for me. So it's a big project, and it actually, as it's grown, it's become more and more expensive, right? I mean, stamps aren't cheap, and just like using Snapfish or whatever to get the cards done. But I can't tell you how far that has gone in just establishing me as like a real person, not only with the clients that I serve, but also with my centers of influence. Because I send those out. Actually, all of you got a Christmas card. Maybe not you guys in the room, but I send a Christmas card to all the agents that are on my team. I send it to all my clients, and then we send it to all of our centers of influence. And it's just another touch point throughout the year to make sure that clients know who we are. That I actually on the back, I do put my business contact information. I put my website, my 800 number on there, just letting them know. And it's really interesting and sometimes an odd feeling because a lot of my clients ask a lot about my kids now. And at first, I was kind of like, oh, they're really interested in me and my kids. Now they've seen these kids grow up over the last, 12, 15, 18 years. And I've had a really interesting situation of walking into some of my clients' homes, and our family photo is hanging on their refrigerator in the kitchen, which is also kind of a weird thing, I'm like, it makes you do a double take. But I think it's cool to have those opportunities to engage with your clients. And I think it just, again, drives this whole referral practice, people knowing you and understanding you and realizing, that you are a good person. And that just facilitates, I think, more referrals coming in. So something else I'm just going to mention here. So we did this earlier this year. Thank you to Sandra for helping with this. We actually built out and did a presentation. Sandra, how many financial planners did we have at that Edward Jones event? 30. So we worked with one of the regional people at Edward Jones, and it's actually Sandra's financial planner. He's kind of in charge of the region. I don't know what the title is or whatever, but we brainstormed this early in, I think it was the spring of 2024, and then we executed it in September. And what we did is we said we want to put together a lunch event for Edward Jones specifically. We hosted it at a nice restaurant. We paid for everything. But basically, we invited these advisors to come in, and I did a 90-minute presentation before lunch around, I think it was focused on Medicare, right? Was the beginning. And then we served lunch. And then as everybody got their food and stuff, I launched into another 90-minute presentation specifically about health insurance and under 65 Obamacare and subsidies and how all of that worked. And we had over 30 advisors that came into that. We followed up with, I think, a little gift of chocolates that we mailed to their offices and just told them thank you for attending. And it's just another way to get in front of some of these people and let them know the business that we do is very complementary to that of a financial advisor, and also to CPAs, and at some level attorneys, right? So how do you identify these individuals and how do you develop a relationship with them? Many of our top agents, as they're doing their walk and talks into small business America, will make sure to seek out the state farm agencies, the farm bureau agencies, the all state agencies, the financial planning. I mean, you look at Edward Jones here in Northern Indiana, and I presume in Western Michigan. I live in Middlebury, Indiana. It might as well be Mayberry, Indiana. And I think we have 5 Edward Jones advisors in that one small little town that I live in. So, these agents and advisors are everywhere. So it's just a matter of, building a relationship with them and getting to know them a little bit. A couple of other things that I just want to touch on before we wrap things up. We'll be done here in about 10 minutes or so. But another way I think to drive referrals is to work to engage with local organizations. And there's a lot of different ones that are out there. There are trade organizations, NAHU, which is National Association of Health Underwriters, but I think they've recently changed to NABIP, NABIP. I don't even know what that stands for, but NABIP is something like that. Sandra said it. But there's also NAIFA, National Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors. There's SHRM, which is the Society of HR Managers, I think. These are like national organizations that have local chapters where people get together on a semi-regular basis. Oftentimes it's monthly to just cross-pollinate and have presentations from people. And so this is something that we've done a pretty good job of here locally with Sandra's help, is getting involved with those organizations. And I'd encourage you guys, seek out those organizations. I mentioned the Michiana HR Association we're involved with here. If you're new, I think getting involved in a BNI group, Business Network International, these are organizations or small groups of individuals that come together on a regular basis for lunch or breakfast and share referrals back and forth. One of the cool things about BNI is that it's very structured, in that if you're in that BNI group, you're going to be the only insurance agent in your line of business in that group. And so each week they go around and each person takes an opportunity, I think, to present who they are, what they do, what kind of clients they're looking for, where they can, most help other consumers. And then if people are in that group, and it's a paid group, if people are in that group, the expectation is each week you're bringing in referrals for the other members of the group. And it's really, really productive. I was in a BNI group early in my career. I know Gary Boverhoff was in a BNI group. I know Justin on the call is in a BNI group. A lot of these BNI groups, they allow you to go out and sit in for a meeting or two, just as a visitor, to see what the group's like. If you like the people, maybe you don't, maybe you do. But I think it's important to get into a good BNI group. I know locally here, I wouldn't be surprised. Somebody told me there were 12 or 15 BNI groups locally. I think that might be accurate. So maybe there's more than that. I think you can Google them though. If you go to, I don't know if it's bni.org or it's Business Network International, you can actually connect with them through their website and then find the local groups and begin to, make those outreaches. They do vet you a little bit. So they're going to ask for some referrals. They're going to call and check on those referrals and make sure that, you're a good person and that at least somebody says you're a good person before they bring you in. So there's some things you can do there. I think Chamber of Commerce is another great local organization that you can get involved with. Obviously, those are other small business owners, and each little town has their own Chamber of Commerce. So we have a number of agents that are involved in multiple chambers of commerce, for the surrounding, towns or cities that they might be a part of. So I think that's good. Social media is another big piece of this. Obviously, social media is becoming bigger and bigger. I feel like every year it's just snowballing into something more and more. One of the things, though, that I think you can really do is you can leverage your Facebook business page and your LinkedIn profile to not only connect with other professionals and other individuals that might need your services, but I think it's not just connecting with these people, it's pushing out pertinent content on a regular basis, right? So one of the ways that I've used both LinkedIn and Facebook over the years is when I see a good article about something that's pertinent to my business, I will put it out there with a couple of talking points. Just say, hey, I don't know if any of you find this valuable, but here's some things that I pulled from this. I think that's a really valuable way of beginning to position yourself as an expert. If you guys are like me, I scroll, unfortunately, I hate it some days, but I scroll Facebook, I scroll LinkedIn, I'm looking at updates, I'm reading articles. Honestly, there's a lot of content that I get from those two feeds that sometimes are very professional oriented. And so I think starting to establish yourself as that person and people start seeing you in that light and see you starting to put out, valid information, and it doesn't have to be stuff you've curated yourself. It can be articles that you're taking from somebody else and posting them and recognizing, hey, this is not me, but this is what I pulled a value from that particular article. I think that can be really, really beneficial. So some questions that I asked here, I said, number one, is your profile build out and robust on both platforms? So you want to make sure you got a good profile picture on there. You want to make sure you got a good background. You want to ask for recommendations and referrals. All of that stuff really adds to building out that profile. Are you posting on both platforms at least weekly? I think you probably could overdo too much and not enough. I've always felt like at least weekly is kind of a good cadence to get into. Are you engaging with others? Are you liking and sharing things that you see that other people are putting out there? I think on a lot of these types of things, you've got to give to get. So give a recommendation to somebody who you think did a good job on something, or give somebody kudos. If I see somebody posted a good article, I'm like, man, that's good. When I post it to my group, I'm going to credit them. Not only the writer of the article, but I'm going to credit the person where I got it from and give them some kudos, because that'll come back around as well. And you'll find people start, crediting you for things as well. So I think that's really good. And then the last thing I want to talk about just a little bit before we wrap things up is, and this is something I'm working on really heavily right now with my staff and my team, is what we call our post-sale follow-up. So once someone becomes a client, what does that relationship look like from that point forward? And I think there's a lot of different things that can be done to enhance that. And I want to make ours after 24 years better than it's ever been. Um, Sandra and Megan and Nikki and Tanya, the 4 staff members that work for me. I've got a new gal starting on Thursday, Sherry. We're actually doing a half-day meeting here in early March to totally like re-engineer our post-sale follow-up process and make sure that it is a really, really good process. Because I know if we take care of people, they're going to refer people to us. Because what we have is something that people need. So it's just a matter of creating that environment where people want to be referred. So a few questions that I would ask. Number one, do you use your CRM? I think using a customer relationship management tool to manage your clients, to put notes in, to schedule follow-ups, to make sure that a system is reminding you to do what you said you're going to do is really, really important. We talked a little bit about the thank you emails and handwritten thank you letters. If you're using a good CRM like ours, there's a 30-day check-in. There's a happy birthday email. There's quarterly touch points that go out to them, and that's completely automated if you're using our system and our platform. Those handwritten letters sent out to referrals and the people who referred them. I think there's gold in that. Christmas cards. We talked a little bit about that. And then do you have a proactive approach to touch each of your ACA and Medicare clients during the AEP and OEP each year? What's that look like? We're already planning for that. Like, what is our process going to be this fall? Because we now have thousands of people that we need to connect with, during the AEP, OEP season. So how are we going to manage that? What was that? Not during AEP, OEP, please. Sandra's saying she's going to take a vacation during that time. I need her. So we're also thinking through, and this is just what I'm working on right now personally, is what does it look like when customer service issues come in, and how do we triage those more effectively and efficiently and make sure that one person on my staff is dedicated to handling those? I think that having a customer service tracker, it's a simple spreadsheet you can put on the Google Drive, is really important so that you don't drop the ball on getting back to somebody about something or helping somebody resolve an issue. We're also implementing a 30, 60, 90-day follow-up. We've always had, some follow-up, but it just has not been as, I guess, robust and articulate as what I'm wanting to build it out. And we're going to have specific things we want to do at the 30-day mark, the 60-day mark, and then the 90-day mark. And so we're going to be building that into our process. Just a lot of things that we want to make sure we're doing really, really well, because I think if you're taking care of your existing clients, once you have dozens and then hundreds and then thousands of clients, if you can find a way to deliver 5-star customer service to them, this is going to drive referrals, probably more than any single thing that you do from your existing clients. So I know I've talked for about an hour here about this, and I hope you guys have pulled some nuggets from it. I think getting to the point where most of your incoming clients are referred to you is like that's the tip of the iceberg. That's where I think all of us want to get to. I'll tell you, you don't have to work nearly as hard in the business if you can get to the point that people are being referred to you. The last question I kind of posed here is, what steps can you take this week to improve your referability? And hopefully I've given you some good ideas and some good thoughts on this. I'm going to ask a couple of people in the audience, though. I know, Lauren, I'm going to pick on you. I know that you've been in the business here for about a year, just right at a year. And I know you've started to get some referrals coming in. I know in your PTS that you sent last week, you notated that you had a couple of referrals that had come in. You want to just talk about what you're starting to see 12 months into the business from a referral perspective? Because I know you've been doing some of these things we've been talking about a little bit, right?
Yeah. A lot of it is just making sure you're very personable with that person and they're at the center of the attention. They're very important to you. And I've had, because of that, people have been really referring me because I care. You just show you care.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you've done some great things. I just look at your background. I look at your light. I mean, how you're presenting yourself on Zoom, looks great. I mean, it really does. And most of you that have your cameras on, you look pretty good, guys. Well done. So I appreciate you sharing that, Lauren. So Cav, what did I miss? What did I forget about? What else needs to be mentioned about building a referral practice? Do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, you missed the most important part.
Of course I did. What's that?
Google reviews.
Yes.
I think what's happening is We grew up in the internet age where a lot of people got their leads from the internet. And when people go on the internet now, their phone blows up, they get very frustrated. And a comment I've heard thousands of times is, I'll never do that again. And so what people are doing now is they're going to the internet and they're looking for people locally that can provide what they want. So they'll do health insurance agents near me or Medicare agents. And all that comes from what Silas said. It all comes from if we do a process where we take them through a good experience, we help them on the presentation. A Google review actually becomes a virtual referral where it's not just, someone telling a couple people. It's like they go on and they post and give you a 5-star review. They're telling the world how good you are. And again, a lot of my new business now is coming from people who find me on Google. And, it's pretty cool.
So before we wrap things up, we're going to Google Steve Cavajola. Not going to find anything shady here, my Cav.
Just don't scroll to the second page.
So we look here at Cav. Holy cow, right on the mark, Cav. So Cav now has 100 Google reviews that are all 5-star. If I come looking for insurance in LaPorte, Indiana, or Northwest Indiana, and I stumble across Steve's webpage, which there's a pretty good chance I will because Health Markets, because of the volume of business that he writes, and he's over 10,000 FYCRs, Health Markets is actually promoting his business website. But if I come in here and click on this and I start scrolling, and it looks like you've responded to many of them too.
I respond to all of them because that helps boost your search.
And I'd also say, when do you think the best time is to ask for a Google review?
In my full slate system, I shoot out an email a week after every appointment.
Yep.
Now,
I
does
think
everybody do it? No, you have to have a Google account, but I mean, I literally started doing this a year ago and I'm up to 100 5-star reviews, which blows away. I think when you do health insurance near me, the number 2 person has 46 5-star reviews. I mean, people, that's what they're saying. I Googled you, you have more 5-star reviews than anybody. So that's the virtual referral.
I was just looking here in Elkhart, Indiana. Laura Dennison comes up as the highest ranked one in our area. She's got 247 5-star reviews.
Why in the heck is she paying for that? She's got enough. She don't need to sponsor that. She's got enough money there on her own.
She is crushing some pretty good business.
Yeah.
See Ashley here with 4. There's Laura. Michelle's got 73. Oh, look at that guy, 29. I'm working on that. Nowhere close to the rest of you. Jill and Rick have 117. Really cool to see. Letcher, Sam's in the room here. So Tony's got 68.
Yep.
So Bruton Insurance, 54, Rachel. That's great. So I would agree with you, Cab. That is something that I missed in today's conversation, that Google reviews are a big, big piece of driving referrals. And I'll tell you all, I think consumer behavior and how we purchase things has changed and shifted. Many years ago, people would go online and fill out a form and request information. And to Cab's point, anybody who's done that in recent years, they will never do it again because they just get blown up, right? And I think it has shifted away from people doing that. I think people who go online and fill out a form are less sophisticated consumers. They're the, and I don't mean to stereotype, but they're the type of people who don't have a lot of people that they can go to and ask for referrals or ask for recommendations, right? They may be less educated. They might be lower income folks. Where if we're really trying to fish in different ponds and we're trying to, work with those higher income, higher net worth individuals, I know I would never go online and fill out a form. I'm going to be asking my friends, my family, my financial planner, my board members of my personal board, like, where you go for this type of service? And I'm going to get recommendations and referrals from those individuals. So I think that's kind of worth thinking about. And I think as that consumer behavior has shifted, more and more people have gravitated towards, I'm going to use Google not to put my information in, but to seek out local vendors that I can then do some due diligence and some research on before I choose to actually engage with them. We probably get, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 a month of people who call into my office and we're like, how'd you find us? And like, well, I found you on Google. And it's really, really solid leads from that perspective as well. So, well, I hope you guys have pulled.
We used to think of that as just lead generation, but I think it really falls into the referral because again, it is a virtual referral.
Right.
You know, it's once it's on the internet, it's there forever. So it's versus a guy who gives your card out to 2 people and then that's it.
Right.
So
I will tell you too, for those of you that are newer or not yet at 10,000 FYCRs, we want to get you to 10,000 FYCRs very, very quickly, because once we get you to that level, Health Markets comes in and builds out your business profile, your business Facebook page, and they start promoting you. It's called our local listings program. And so there's no cost to you on that. We start promoting you at a much higher level. So one of the big things you're going to see as far as milestones and what we want to help you accomplish is getting to 10,000 FYCRs as quickly as we can so we can kind of flip that switch for you. So, all right, Cav, anything else before we wrap up today?
nope, you did well. Carry on.
Sandra, anything in the chat box? Cool. Well, hopefully you guys pulled some nuggets from today. We're going to keep rocking. Cav's got the next couple of weeks. So we will have some great content from Mr. Cavajola in the coming weeks. I will be sending out the recordings to these videos here shortly. I just haven't had time. We were out of town for a couple